Theresa Griffin and the Conservative Sajjad Karim favour staying in the EU. Paul Nuttall from UKIP is looking for the exit, and he's supported by Peter Lundgren from the Swedish Democrat. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
On our very different location, can I begin with you, Theresa? What's your key argument for those people who are still undecided?
Well, I'm delighted that you said we're in, and obviously we hope to remain. 3.5 million jobs in the UK depend upon us being part of a single market of 500 million citizens. Workers' rights, born in the European Parliament. 28 member states working together. We can protect the environment. We can fight for jobs and growth. We can fight for a prosperous North West.
Paul?
It's simple. If you think we're big enough, if you think we're strong enough, if you think we're good enough, then you will vote to leave. If you think Britain should be making its own laws, doesn't at the moment, the majority are made out here. If you believe that Britain should be paying £55 million a day to this organisation, you'll vote to leave. If you want Britain to be able to control its own borders, sign its own trade deals, if you want a Britain which is successful, strong and looks forward into the 21st century, not back into the 20th, you'll vote to leave.
Saj?
If we're not in the European Union, it will be harder to get foreign direct investment into the United Kingdom. It will be harder for us to project Britain externally to the world, and it will be harder for our citizens to reach out right across Europe, the European Union, to take advantage of the many opportunities that it offers them, whether they are students, whether they just wish to travel, or whether they're doing it for business or work purposes. And the fact of the matter is this: if you want to see a strong United Kingdom taking its part on a global stage, then we have to take leadership in our own neighbourhood first, which means the European Union.
And Peter?
Well, I believe you don't need actually to be a member of the European Union to export things, for example. That is a question about manufacturing good things that people want to buy. You don't have to be a member for doing that. And in Sweden right now, we, like UKIP say, we believe in Britain. We actually hope that there will be a Brexit, because right now I would say UKIP
they've
and
got
UK
their
are the beat.
growth projections based on this distribution centre in Brussels.
Look, we will continue to export once we leave the European Union. One, we're protected by World Trade Organization rules, and secondly, we'll be protected by Article 8 of the Lisbon Treaty, which says that they will have to form a special relationship with their neighbours, and we will be a neighbour outside the European Union.
But we won't be in the single market.
Doesn't matter. Listen, the single market is the biggest con that you hear, right? You know, for every pound that we pay to be members of the single market, we're only actually getting around 66 pence worth of tariffs, so it's costing us more money to actually get into the single market. Look at this. You know, China last year...
Well, no, but I'm thinking about the Real Good Food Company.
I'm actually talking about the bigger issue here. China exported 300 billion euros worth of goods into the single market, yet it isn't a signed-up member of the single market, but it has access. That's the key, you see. Trade will still continue whether you're part of a political union or not.
Theresa wants to jump in.
Why is the North West Business Leadership Team saying to remain in Europe? They are. Yes, they are. They are, Paul. I can show you the quote. Listen. Why is the Chief Executive of Siemens talking about how good it is for business to remain part of a single market of 500,000 citizens?
Leave?
Do you want a sign above the North West for the next year saying uncertainty? Is that what you want for business?
The majority of small businesses in the North West, and they were polled only earlier last month, said that they're fed up with EU red tape and directives which are tying their hands, and you can loosen them by leaving the European Union.
When the Chinese president visited the United Kingdom, I met with him in Manchester, and it was very interesting for me to note in very clear terms that British membership of the European Union and what that offered them was one of the factors that they had in mind for bringing in huge amounts of foreign direct investment into the United Kingdom. Belgium, where we are at this moment in time, exports more to India than the United Kingdom.
Well, isn't that the point?
India...
That's the point.
Paul, please calm down.
Well, I'm telling you, you're wrong.
I think the British people need to have some sensible debate in the coming months.
I'll come back on the India thing.
Your hot air simply, I'm afraid, has had its day. Now it's time to present the facts to them.
That's the
now, if Belgium can export more to India than us after the sort of historical relationship we have with India, that just proves that the EU doesn't get in the way of us taking advantage of export opportunities.
Hang on, can I come back on that? Actually, The point you've made, Taj, about India proves why we should be out the European Union. The fact that we're only doing 3% of our trade with India
the EU
is a disgrace.
doesn't stop
the EU
us.
has.
Can
It
I-
does.
can I just
Hold on, let me
explain-
finish. Taj, you've had your say.
Can I-
Let me
just let
finish,
Paul
Taj.
finish.
The EU has been trying to sign a free trade deal with India for the past 8 years. It's no further on.
I was the parliamentary rapporteur for the EU-India Free Trade Agreement for some 5 years. And this idea that India has any interest in a free trade deal with the United Kingdom on its own is an absolute non-starter.
Peter, what would be the impact on the UK in terms of its trade if it left? Bearing in mind that I would imagine most other European countries wouldn't be very well disposed to the UK if it did leave.
I don't think it will be a problem at all because, as I said, if you're going to trade, all the issues for all the companies is making money. That means they will directly take contact with the UK to make the necessary agreements. UK can export without a problem. As I said, you don't need European Union to export. You need good quality products.
Well, we leave it there because although the divisions are deeper within the Conservative Party, Labour's also got its Eurosceptics. Among them, the former Minister, Frank Field, if we remain in the EU.
Look, the people of the United Kingdom have no objection to people visiting the United Kingdom for a holiday. They have no objection to people wanting to come to study in the United Kingdom from other parts of the European Union. They have no objection to people coming and working in the United Kingdom. What they do object to is people having access to free welfare services without having made a contribution. And that has been solved. It may be that that perception has been given to people by people like Paul, who continuously keep repeating this message.
Sorry,
But in actual fact, the position is very different. And seeing as we're dealing with immigrants and foreigners at this moment in time, it's also interesting for me that if the president of our closest ally, the United States of America, says it's good for the United Kingdom to remain in the European Union.
We've done well listening to presidents of the United States over the years, haven't we? Wouldn't have gone into Iraq if it wasn't for George W. Bush.
Stick to immigration.
OK, I'll stick with immigration. Look, the simple fact is that the Bank of England have told us that mass immigration into this country has led to wage stagnation.
No, they have not.
Yes, they have.
The Bank of England have not said any such...
Mark Carney said it,
no,
OK.
the Bank of England did not say any such thing.
It's led to wage stagnation. Let me finish.
Just because you repeat something ever louder doesn't make it.
Just let Paul finish.
Let me finish. Look, with facts, right? Here's facts.
I'll give you
Last year alone, from the European Union, 257,000 people came into our country. That is a city the size of Hull. Why can't we have an Australian points-based system like the Australians have, where if you've got the skills our country needs,
EU immigrants have contributed more than they have taken out.
Well, if that's the case,
Paul, can we stop talking over one another and actually have a debate? In terms of the Northwest, migration from the rest of the European Union is actually an economic gain. These are skilled people actually contributing taxes, skills and abilities to the Northwest economy.
But why does Frank Field, who's a senior member of your party, say that your party's ignoring it?
I was in Birkenhead. My pleasure to be in Birkenhead.
He's popular, very popular.
It was my pleasure to be in Birkenhead a few weeks ago and actually to talk to his own CLP. And I can assure you that the vast majority of people in Merseyside understand that Merseyside has had over £1 billion worth of investment into the regeneration of Liverpool. You remember, European Capital of Culture transformed the city of Liverpool. We are now on an international stage, punching our weight as an international city. Thanks to the European Union.
Do you know that for every £2.88 that Merseyside puts in, it only gets £1 back?
That is incorrect.
And it's £2.99 in Manchester. That is the economics of the Met.
Calm down.
It's the economics of the Met House.
Allow the British people to have...
Yes.
Don't say that. It got David Cameron.
Sorry, calm down again from the Tories. Sorry, Sarge. Good Lord.
The economic case doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense
not to you.
on immigration at all. Well, actually, you know that money that we save.
Ask the worker at Vauxhall whether it makes sense. Ask the worker at Siemens whether it makes sense. Ask the worker at British Aerospace whether it makes sense. Ask the academics in our region whether it makes sense.
You're playing fast and loose with people's livelihoods.
Peter, if the UK leaves Europe, isn't it true, if we remain part of the single market, that we'd still have to stick with their rules and might well still have to have freedom of movement, whether we like it or not?
No, Why?
Look at Norway.
You will make your own trade agreements, of course. Look at Iceland, for example. They have managed already to make a closer trade agreement with China.
300,000 people.
And we are not
We
even
are not
close.
Iceland.
We are not
Norway.
Let him speak.
By your definition, as a Briton,
Hang on a
I'm
minute.
qualified to comment on this.
Yeah.
A Swedish, by your definition, not mine, a Swedish individual is not qualified to have any opinion on this by your definition.
But we are still the members of the European Union.
And I welcome your
So-
input.
so then
Peter,
I can
I welcome
comment.
Swedish
Peter,
input.
why would the European Union allow us to leave and still give us all the benefits that we get
Not
from
about
it?
the European Union. As I said, different countries want to trade together. Why should we go that turn over the European Union all the time? Close the deals between the countries. That's no problem. We have done that before. People seem to think that there's no world without the European Union. Of course there is.
What's obvious is there's
Yes.
two people on that side
Sorry.
who don't think Britain's good enough, OK?
No, that's
the
nonsense.
bottom line.
Absolutely.
I absolutely
Britain is
resent
not
that
bottom
sort of
line.
assertion.
You don't think we're big enough.
I
You don't think
absolutely
we're good enough.
resent that sort of
Don't.
assertion.
Sorry, Paul, why did UKIP not vote to bring youth unemployment money to the Northwest?
Do you really
why?
think? Do you really think
You
the
should be
European Parliament
representing
has any power?
the people
Come
of the
on,
Northwest
the Commission.
region.
On the one
European
hand, you say
Commission
we
make
have
the
no
laws.
power.
The European
On the other
Commission.
hand, you
No,
say we have
don't.
all the power, and
The
the
European
national parliaments
Commission
don't have any power.
make the laws,
You can't have
we
it
hand it
both
down,
ways.
right, and
Can't have
they
it
do
both
it in
ways.
secret.
Arif, I'm in your
The
hands.
legislation.
You
Well,
know
on that
better.
moment of harmony, we leave it there. We tell you enough about what's going on in Brussels. Here's a special treat, our EU roundup in 60 seconds.
Cumbria, Blackburn, Blackpool and Warrington were named amongst the 10 most Eurosceptical parts of the country in a poll by YouGov. Liverpool and Manchester were the most Europhile parts of the North West. The one-time Wirral West MP, Esther McVeigh, nailed her colours to the mast. The former Employment Minister says she'll be voting to leave after being shocked by visits to the European Council in Brussels. But bosses at Vauxhall, which employs 2,000 people, and Ellesmere Port say they want the UK to stay in. The motor industry contributes £16 billion a year to the economy. The Chancellor and MP for Tatton, George Osborne, could go head-to-head with Boris Johnson in a TV debate on the referendum, according to the reports this week. And Manchester United keeper David De Gea and striker Anthony Martial might not qualify for a work permit if the rules changed after Brexit, according to The Guardian.
So just finally, what's your predictions for what's going to happen in the referendum? Peter?
I really hope that the British people will believe in Britain, that they actually see there's no problem at all to survive without the European Union. Right now, the complete of Europe is looking at Britain. So I would say, believe in Britain. You are the beacon of light in Europe right now.
Saj?
Believe in Britain because we are a great nation that can take leadership. Our interests are by making sure we are at the forefront of European politics.
Paul?
I think that the British people will see that Cameron's so-called renegotiation didn't add up to a row of beans, that he asked for nothing, he got nothing, this place isn't going to change. In fact, it could only get worse as it expands, and we have even more harmonisation. Do you know what? I think momentum's with us, and I think on June the 24th, we'll be out the European Union.
You don't want to be here. Why
Teresa?
don't you resign now, Paul?
It's about jobs and growth. It's about my region taking its place as a world leader. It's about my region and jobs and the hope and aspirations of our young people. It's about
gonna
us
happen?
being a world leader in science,
What's
innovation.
going to happen?
What's going to happen? We are going to vote to remain.
OK. Well, that's it from us. My thanks to Teresa Griffin, to Sajad Karim, Paul Nuttall and Peter Lundgren. Just 110 days left to make your...
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.